Welcome to my third video for our design project on making an action RPG in Unity. This is still our first kind of main chapter where we're getting controls working. And so in this video, we're going to actually get a player inserted into the world and set up some basic animations using the Unity animator, and then also scripting some basic movement. And so I guess let's start. My map is a little bit more evolved since the second video. I added just a few other ground clutter items, but it does not matter how many of these ground clutter items you have, because once we start setting up movement and getting the layering working, the process for adjusting all of them is the same. So I'm going to create a empty object called player, and it has nothing. So I'm going to reset the transform. And let's add a sprite component. So rendering sprite renderer. And now we've started our process of setting up the 2D object. But we need to import in the player graphics. So I am going to go to my textures folder, and I'm going to create a new subfolder called player. All right. And so I'm going to go to my textures folder. And inside the subfolder for player, I have this sprite sheet here called ARPG player. And I have a notes.txt that actually lists out what each of these columns are in terms of frame animations. So if we were to look at this, we can see that this is describing row 1 is all the facing downs and so on. This first column here is the standing. These two columns are walking. This is carrying, walking, running frames. So all these are labeled out so we can actually figure out what we need. We're not going to need all of these frames, but we have them in the sprite sheet in case we do. One of the more tedious parts of this video is going to be renaming some of these sprites. So let's import it in and start working with it. So I've imported it in, and it is ActionRPG player, and we've got our file here. The pixels per unit that I found looks the best for this one is 24. This is drawn on a scale of each sprite being 32 pixels by 32 pixels, but I found that 24 just looks good for the scale of the world I'm going for. Switch the sprite mode to multiple, and we're going to do similar to what we did for the tile sheets, and we're going to slice this up. So we go to slice, and I'm going to use grid by cell size, and these ones are 32 by 32. Then hit slice, and now we have all these sprites. I'm leaving the pivot to be the center, because it's going to make it easier for me to calculate like where to spawn fireballs from. I don't really want the pivot to be the feet, although there is a solid reason to make the feet the pivot, but I still can kind of configure where the collider is. So the pivot itself doesn't matter too much. It matters a lot for rotations though. So this is probably the worst part, but I'm going to rename all of these sprites. So I'm going to call this player underscore stand underscore down, because he's facing down, and then 1. So the naming convention is chosen this way so that when it alphabetizes them, it's going to sort all the player stand frames together, and then it's going to sort them by which way they're facing, and then it's going to sort them by which frame number they are. So that's probably going to be one of the more time-consuming parts of this. So this one's going to be player stand right, stand left. We can go back and rename these. So I'm going to just rename this first set and the walking ones. Then let's get these over here. This is going to be player walk down 1. This will be player walk down 2. Player walk right 1. Player walk right 2. Oops. So it's like walk left 1. Walk left 2. And walk up 1 and walk up 2. I recommend renaming them before using them in any sort of animations because it is not the most pleasant experience to go back and rename them after you've started using them. So for this video, these are going to be the only ones that we're going to do. We will eventually want the attacking ones. So if you have time after this video, I would consider going through and renaming this to be player attack down 1. This one would be player attack down 2. And then I would do the ranged ones as well. So this is ranged attack. We'll call it attack ranged, just so it sorts in a similar area. Attack range down 1 and attack range down 2. So I recommend either pausing the video and renaming those, but I'm not going to show my renaming of those sprites on this video. So once we've done all of that, we don't need to worry about the physics shape because we're going to be defining our own colliders, and we're good to hit apply. And so we can exit out of this. And for that player sprite that we just wonderfully added, we can now go to my player ARPG, expand this out, and you'll see that all the default names are just these numbers. That would be a huge pain to set up animations with. But when we've renamed them, they're a lot easier to find in this list. So I'm just going to throw the standing down one here so its default graphic is that. Looking at the edges, I can immediately tell this is being smoothed. So I forgot to change that. And let's move the player so we can at least see this. You can see that it's got this smoothing effect going on here. So that's just, if we go to ARPG player, that's the filter by linear. So if we switch it to point, you can see how it goes back to being more of a pixel art style. Trilinear still does a stronger filtering. So really, I think point's going to look best for this. Keeping in mind, we're going to be viewing the game from about this distance. So, all right, so we've got that. Next up is actually beginning to configure the animation states for the player. So we're going to have to open up the animator. The animation window. We'll need animator in a second. In the animation one, it looks like this. You may not have the samples turned on by default right here. So if you need that, go to the triple, well, I guess we need to make an animation first. So let's click on the player. And let's begin making a, we actually do need animations for idle, which seems odd, but we do still need a single sprite animation for idle. So let's click create. And we're going to create a new animation. So we need to make a new folder inside my assets. We're going to create a new folder and call it animations. Subfolder in there called player. And I'm going to rename this animation to player idle down. Hit save. And now we have my animator. And so we're just going to drag and drop the stand down onto here. So it's a single frame of animation, but we need to be able to do that to switch between walking and standing still. So it is not the most exciting thing on the planet. But if you wanted to, if yours does not have this samples thing showing up, we will be playing around with that. That defines the frame rate of our animation. So this means 60 frames per second attempted. And so if that's not showing up, you'll have to click these triple dots over here and go to show sample rates. And so then you can play with that. It's one of the quick ways to change the speed of your animation. So we need to go do this for the other directions. So we're going to create a new clip. We're going to call this player idle right. And we're going to bring in the stand right at time 0 right there. I don't think it's going to let you put it at a well, it does let you put it at a different time. But we only want it at time 0. Then create a new clip. Player idle left. Bring in the stand left animation, or the frame. Create a new clip. Player idle up. And we'll bring in the standing up frame. All right, so we've got our idle frames. Next up is to actually start building the walking frames. So we're going to click on create a new clip, and I'm going to call this player walk down. Hit save. And so the walking animation, to save space, they do this type of sprite sheet is set up so that you use the standing one in between. So we're going to start with a walk down 1. Then we're going to bring in a walk, then we'll bring in the stand down 1 and just put it 5 seconds into it. Then we'll do walk down 2 and then another stand. And so we can go watch this. We can zoom in on our player. And if we hit play, we can actually see the speed at which this is going to play. Couple things going on here. First off, we've got this. This one's ending its time here after, like, it's not giving this last frame a full 5 seconds, because like these ones go until 5 seconds. So we can add another keyframe of the down stand at 19. Kind of sad I can't see the thing as I drag it. And so you can see that this is ending right at 20. Still doesn't fix the problem of it going too fast. So if we drop the samples, you can see how what impact that has. And we can choose to also drag these closer together if we wanted to. And while this does look weird at the bottom of this animation, the goal is to provide 2 ticks of the stand frame, which we can kind of see that there's going to be 2 ticks of stand. And so if that looks like a good speed, we might just stick with that. We won't really know till we actually start walking around in the world if this feels good. So maybe let's keep its samples to 8. And it looks like I've got two time units in between each of these. So I guess that really kind of translates to completing the full walk cycle in 1 second. All right, so if we're happy with that, then we're going to start creating the other ones. So we'll do the same exact thing. We're going to create a player walk right, and we're going to bring in the first walking right frame, drop the samples down to 8, push enter, so it commits to that. Then we want stand right in time mark 2. Then we want walk right in time mark 4, and then stand right in 6. And you see how it's stopping at 7, so we're just going to bring another stand right there. So it transitions all the way up to 8. And so we can actually see that animation will look like that. If we didn't, you can delete these just by right-clicking on and going delete key. And actually, if I didn't put that extra keyframe there, notice at the end of the animation, it's kind of got this quick transition back. It's not smooth. So that's actually why I need to have this extra one there. Oops, that's the wrong one. Well, we're going right, stand right. and that doesn't have that little hiccup in his steps. All right, new clip. Player walk left. We're gonna do the same thing. Samples 8. We need to start with the walk left. We need the stand left. Walk left 2. Stand left. And then stand left again. So that this full thing is 8 ticks. You see that it's expanding out there. We can even preview it to make sure it looks good. Then we have this walking up, I believe. Player walk up. And in player walk up, same deal. 8 samples. And we're going to start with walk up 1. Put 2 ticks in between. Put stand up 1. Put 2 ticks. Walk up 2. And then stand up 1, followed by another stand up 1. And that looks good as well. All right, so we've got our animations built for the player. We can close this window for now. There's a lot of other cool things that this animator tool will do that we'll see, especially when we start setting up attack animations. Well, so now the problem is player is not set up to use these. So we need to work on the animator. So go to the window, animation, and we want animator. Animator may be nested into this main window. It's fine if it is. So it actually built all these extra states. And that you could set up transitions between all of these. You could try to do some form of structuring where you can like allow transitioning between all these states. That's actually not probably the best way to approach having 4 directions for the player to be facing. So I'm actually deleting all these. I'm going to keep this for now. I'll delete it later. We want to use something called a blend tree. So if we create a state from a new blend tree, a blend tree is a type of animator that allows you to do multi-directional animations. So it's pretty neat. I'm going to rename it from blend tree to blend tree parentheses idle. Good name. And then we double click it. So the blend tree allows us to link different variables to behaviors with animation. So that does also lead me to realize that we need a few variables to base the blending off of. So if we look off to the side, it created this one here for us called blend because it needs a variable to go into this. So let's back out of this blend tree and delete blend. Blend not gonna be happy with us. And let's go and add a new float called let's call it velocity, and let's call it move x. Oh, I can rename it. Let's go with horizontal instead. Makes more sense overall. Horizontal. We're gonna add another float called vertical. And one more float called speed. We can use that. While we're here, we might as well just define the trigger for attack. We'll come back to that probably in the second set of videos, when we get to player attacks, but why not? We'll have that there. So now let's return to this blend tree. And blend tree wants some variables, I think. So let's go and take a look at the type. So where is my type of blend tree? Hang on. create the blend tree. There should be an option here for type. I don't necessarily see it. No. Oh, there it is. It's in the inspector by clicking on the blend tree. So delete that. So the process is to go to create a state, create a new blend tree. Takes us to this, and then double click it to enter. Right click this and click on add motion, and that adds one of these motions. The blend type is a 1D, but we want to switch that from 1D to 2D simple directional. And we need to add yet another motion type here. So right click this and go add motion. And you can see that this has now switched to being a three-dimensional grid now. Let's link this second variable to be a vertical variable. Add another motion, add another motion. So we're going to put all of our motions in here. This is where we're going to link my animations. We can go find my animations up here under the animations player folder, which we have kind of conveniently here. This is going to be my idle blend tree. So let me start dragging and dropping these things in. So we'll put player down, we'll put player up, we'll put player right, and we'll put player left. Player idles, these are all the idles. So if you're idling down, that means your Y position is going to be a -1. If you're idling up, your Y position is a +1. If you're idling to the right, that means your X position is 1. And if you're idling to the left, it's -1. And so what this does is this allows us to create points at which, based on what the player's facing, you can see in the bottom preview on the right, based on these horizontal and vertical variables, will determine which way the player is going to face. Which is kind of cool. This is just a preview. It doesn't actually matter where this red dot ends up. One thing to note, though, is actually 2 animations are active, and it just chooses between those which ones you're closest to. So that looks good for now. There's nothing else we would need to change with this, so we can back out of it. And then let's give this thing its name back, blend tree idle. Let's make the blend tree from moving now, and then we'll probably end the video after we do that, because we'll just need to start scripting. We'll do that in another video. So make a new blend tree, rename this to blend tree walk, and double click. This one is going to need to have, we need to go through and add the motions. So click on this and click add a motion. Switch it to 2D simple directional. We want 4 motions. Our parameters are horizontal followed by vertical. And then we just need to attach my same things here. So we'll do player walk down, player walk up, player walk right, and player walk left. Doesn't matter the order you put them in, because you're actually defining the X and Y coordinates here. So a Y down of -1, +1, X is +1, and left is -1. So it's kind of like just the standard Cartesian directions. So like I said, doesn't matter the order you put these in, and it should just be kind of a logical setting there. And so based on which way this is being ran at, the player is going to choose a different walking animation. All right, so let's make the idle the default state, set layer as default state by right-clicking on it. Let's take out player down. And the very last thing we're going to do is define the transitions between these two states. And then we're going to stop here, and we're going to start coding in the next video. So the very first thing we want to do is create a transition out of idle and into walk. So right click on idle and do make transition and go up to walk. You can see it builds a line here. If we click on this line, we can then dictate how it leaves this transition and on what condition does it leave this transition. So for the condition to go into walk, let's just do speed is greater than 0.01. Give it a little bit of leeway. Now, as far as leaving the idle animation, we want it to happen immediately. So takeout has exit time. Has exit time basically means the animation needs to finish in order for you to transition. And then the transition duration should be 0. In short, we want to instantly leave idle and go into walk. Then walking back into idle, right click on walk, make transition to idle, click on that arrow, turn off has exit time, and set the duration to 0, and give it the condition of speed is less than 0.01. And so now if we change the speed variable, it'll instantly go back to the idle state. And then that links those two between each other, and we are going to eventually investigate and add in like attack states and other cool things. So that is how we're going to handle our animations. At that point, we have our animations set up. Unfortunately, we aren't able to really truly test the player yet. It runs. We should verify that player has the player controller. And as of right now, we're ready to start scripting the player to move. But we've now just set up all the animations so that the player will be able to move around. So join me for the next video when we actually get the player to move.